Welcome to Our News, an informative program on the weekly progress of the collectivity. My name is Keisha Brooks. Stay tuned for this week's reports. Welcome back. Agence Régionale de Santé, the Regional Agency of Health, ARS, is a public institution with administrative and financial autonomy. It is responsible for overseeing the healthcare system and the implementation of the public health policy in the region. Its intervention fields covers all areas of public health, such as prevention, health promotion, health monitoring and security, the organization of care provision in urban medical offices, health facilities, medical and social structures. Representatives from ARS met with President Aline Hansen, territorial and executive councilors, and the Conseil de Quartiers, the neighborhood councils, to discuss a plan of action against the chikungunya disease.
Well, basically, what is happening is that we had discovered a certain amount of suspected case that had been get back to us via the Veille Sanitaire. And further the investigation, we have located that there's other areas that could be possibly infected. Now, the question is to get a plan of action, which we already put in place, but we have to get the collectivity involved where the environment is concerned. And the main purpose of the meeting is to also see how we can put a plan of action of communication to the public. Because without the people, and with a lot of people information, we cannot do everything. Actually, we have the spraying campaign that's going on in the area where the outbreak started, which is in Oyster Pond, which would be follow up to French Quarter. And after that, we have a joint program with the Dutch side that we're going to go over the border from the French Quarter, go around the border to Belvedere, then come back around into Oyster Pond. And progressively, we will come back down to the other areas, such as Grand Cars, Marigot, back down to the sandy ground. To sensibilize and to really get the population to understand that this is the first time that we're facing the chikungunya in St. Martin, meaning that nobody is immunized against this virus. In other words, if it gets out of hand, it's going to really spread very rapidly. So this is why the IRS put all the means that they has. We have actually a backup of 6 guys from Guadeloupe that are here from since Monday. No, since Friday. And then we get 2 extra ones today, so a total of 6. Follow that next week Monday, we'll have backup from 4 fellows from Martinique, because we really has to try, I would say, try to out the foyer in Oyster Pond, and then to stop it from spreading further. The symptoms are similar to the dengue fever, except that you have extra pain and the wrist. I would say like cramps that you can move your hands. Some people cannot walk. Yeah, they get cramps in their legs. But on the medical field, my colleague Severine, who the nurse for the IAS, would get involved. But what I would say is that the main, the main position that the people should take is individual protection. In other words, you avoid the mosquitoes from biting you. You use spray repellent. If it's possible, you put long sleeves clothes on your hands, for example. Avoid from getting bite. That's one. Then the second phase, make sure that you have no breeding area around your houses. I mean, everything that can hold water is reliable to produce mosquitoes. That's it. For the systems, we have what we call biological control. What we do, we implement small fishes. We call them in French goulomine. In reality, they're the same family of the guppies. And we implement them into the system, but only for system not destined to drinking water. The reason for that, because it's very simple. Once you put them in, you don't have no big maintenance to do. That's one. And then the second phase is also people who store water in tanks. The easiest way to protect the mosquitoes from getting into the tank is to put a mosquito screen across it. If you don't have a mosquito screen, you could put a simple piece of cloth and tie it around listen, the objective, you got to realize that the chemical product, actually, they are not, how to say, the active is very weak and limited. So what we call the treatment mechanic means simply to stop the mosquitoes from getting access to water. That's what you got to get in your mind. And also, like for example, you would see like small, how you call it, flower plants that you have those coupel under the plants. You have to get rid of those things because you don't realize it, but mosquitoes hatch into them. And then another big problem that we have is the gutters. The gutters, them that not clean, that have branches in them, they hold water, and all of these, this might apply in the mosquitoes more and more.
Stay tuned to next week's edition of Our News, where we will have a special on the chikungunya disease. As of October 10, 2010, St. Martin is now governed by its own constitution and the following institutions of government: Governor as head of state, Parliament, and the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. The Parliament is the highest legislative body of country St. Martin and represents the entire population of the Dutch side of the island. The Parliament consists of 15 members who are elected for a 4-year period. The Parliament elects a president and deputy president from its own numbers. On Tuesday, parliamentarians met with President Aline Hansen, President of the French Side Tourism Office, Jean Van Tepoel, Territorial Councillor in charge of Water and Transportation, Louis Fleming, and Executive Councillor Christophe Enoch to better acquaint themselves with the structure of the collectivité.
Very positive that we have been able to, on a practical basis, come together on issues that are of importance to the people of both the French and the Dutch side. So I'm very, very happy with the meeting, Madame la Présidente. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. It was a pleasure, Honorable President Gracita, to have you over here today and exchange really on practical and pragmatic things that we can do together and we can deal with at our level. It was something, as you said, that was promised for the 11th of November, and we see it come true. And it's so that even step by step, we have to go towards what we call a better cooperation, French that side, because St. Martin is Europe before even they imagine Europe. So I do not see how, when it have like a hurricane, we can cooperate. Well, we have to be able to cooperate also on different levels.
What was rather interesting today is that from the standpoint of the parliamentarians as well as the elected officials from the French side of St. Martin, from the collectivité, it became absolutely obvious that no matter what their respective bodies of laws and regulations provide regarding how they should manage their internal affairs, the only way for them to be successful is to actually join forces with each other so as to make sure that whatever result is obtained is one that benefits both sides of the island. We keep talking about both sides as if it was two different countries, and we keep emphasizing the fact that there's a Dutch side and a French side. There is the island of St. Martin. Some say there's a border. From a legal standpoint, I say there's no border. International law defines a border in such a way that if there was a border on the island, there would be no border. I mean, there would be no island, sorry. Because a border is, from a European standpoint today, a border is more than 150 kilometers in width. No, there's the island of St. Martin, and there's an open border. And so whatever happens on one side, on the northern side, or on the southern side, has effects on the other side. And so today it became absolutely obvious, and I thought it was an outstanding meeting, because of the fact that the whole issue of cooperation came forward and obviously became the solution to most of the problems that we have here. We've dealt with ports, we talked about airports, we talked about immigration, we've talked about employment, we've talked about social affairs, we talked about health affairs, we talked about European funds, and we realized that the most interesting aspect of European fundings at this given moment is the fact that we now have, we'll have as of January 2014, an operation program for cross-border cooperation, and of course that becomes all of a sudden, it causes the lights to go off in our heads because we're realizing we can access funding from the European Commission at this moment to somehow help us to work these situations and the constraints and realities that we have on this particular territory. So I think, in and out, that was basically what the meeting was about today. It's definite. At the conclusion, you heard everybody looking forward for the next meeting.
The National Center of the Territorial Civil Service, CNFPT, is a national French public establishment in the service of local and regional authorities and their personnel. The CNFPT is in charge of the professional training of the personnel of local and regional authorities, as well as the organization of certain competitive entry examinations and professional examinations for the Territorial Civil Service. CNFPT representatives met with President Hansen on Wednesday to review the accomplishments of 2013 and accept the requests of the COM for 2014.
Good morning to all. We have with us here present in the collectivity of St. Martin two experts from the National Center of Training for Public Servants. They are here. Actually, we have a program that began about 3 years ago that concludes this year and the end of December 2013. It was a training of the servants, civil servants in different areas like the police force, the building, construction, urbanism, and so to be able, and resources to be able to elevate the level of the civil servants of St. Martin. So we are at the point that we are going to resume and do status of what has been done and also of what the collectivity would like and expect from them for the upcoming year 2014. So as we approach the end of December 2013, it is very important for them to come on this spot to be able to talk with the new president, because I was elected in April, and also to see what is my perspective for the workers of the collectivity.
The opening of the storage facility for non-hazardous waste was held on Wednesday up Grand Quai, Cul-de-Sac, by the previous garbage dump. The facility, built under French and European standards, is a structuring device that gives our island the means to properly manage its waste in close synergy with EcoSite Recycling. Present on the site was President Hansen, who discussed the new facility and the importance of recycling.
I would like to say that the families in St. Martin have to make sure that they make this great effort of going towards the selection of the garbage, because we know that we use a lot of bottled water, which is plastic, and that the more the collectivity can make sure that these bumps that are in different areas are used properly, to put the plastic where the plastic's supposed to be put, to put the how do you call that, the carton, with the cartons and things, so where it's supposed to be put, to put also glass where it's supposed to be put. It will be a better for the community. We will have like more time and place to go on and on for the years to come, for the new generation to be able to subsist in a practical manner. We know that in Europe they began years before us, and we know that today we have to make sure that when at home we are selecting our garbage, that we put glass together, and I will insist with that, glass together, we put plastic together, and we put carton together. We know that the carton that having like milk or so, we cannot put it with a normal carton box that you get from the grocery and so. And I would like to emphasize to all the business places in St. Martin to tell them that every time they are taking merchandise and putting it on their shelves, they're supposed to at least recuperate this carton, bring it back in here to the company, and the collectivity and revenge is going to get money from that recuperation. I think we have to insist on this with the young people, with all the merchants of St. Martin, with all the restaurateurs in St. Martin. There's a lot for them to do. St. Martin has come from way back. We have improved, but we still have to elaborate and continue ameliorating the way we treat our dump from our household.
First Vice President Guillaume Arnel, who is in charge of environment, was also present to speak about the process put in place.
Today, in this particular setting, what we used to do in the past is just bring your garbage and dump it, which means as rain would fall, there would be infiltration of the rainwater in the garbage, and then it would pollute all what is underground as natural resources underground. And this, what we are witnessing here today, is a modern way in order to treat your household garbage. Now, let us be clear with this. It's your household garbage that is concerned here by this new experimentation this morning. And with a liner in the bottom, you'd be able, I think we have a capacity here for approximately 5-6 years maximum, but that would allow us to be able to get away from what we're seeing in the back of us, this huge mountain, and be able to more satisfy the needs of St. Martin in terms of space and also in terms of treatment of the garbage itself, and without the bad effect of infiltrating our underground waters. As from now, our household garbage would be dumped immediately into the biggest basin. That basin has a liner and has a certain height. And as we would go on, we would be piling up the garbage, and when the rainwater would flow, there would be a sort of a filtering system that would depollute the water and then would be drained into those other two basins, whereby you can maybe use it for any other purposes. So that was one of the reasons why you've been seeing here that huge liner. That is what would prevent us of polluting our underground.
Okay, how does this affect? The National Archives have one of the largest and most important archival collections in the world, a testimony to the very ancient nature of the French state, which has been in existence for more than 12 centuries already. The National Archives are under the authority of the French Archives Administration in the Ministry of Culture. The director in charge of the Archives of France visited the president on Thursday.
We are here today exceptionally as the director of the National Archives is in a tour in the Antilles. He is here in St. Martin today, and we will be in Guadeloupe tomorrow. I think it was necessary for him to see the infrastructures, the archives. You know that St. Martin Archives are in Guadeloupe, in the Hypothèque of Basse-Terre, also in the Archives Department, in the Department of Guadeloupe. It's a necessity for us to bring back those archives here to St. Martin, and also things that have been preserved in the urbanism by the hospital in St. Martin, and also at the Library of St. Martin. All of that will be combined. And then with the modern technicity, we will see how we can meet and have numerous articles and things with the different places and regions in France that have elements concerning St. Martin. Because the elements concerning St. Martin, they are in Paris, they are in Nantes, they are in Bordeaux, because we have different places that we were connected to. It was of utmost necessity for him to see how we progress since June. And I know the population is definitely waiting for the opening of the infrastructure, but we must know that even the library, when they move, when they have to do back and computerize on a newly data, because we know things evaluate, so we see the job that is done by Patrice Java and his team. We also see what they recruited, because we had to recruit somebody that is specialized in archive, and she is doing a great job towards the opening of the building. We had proposed January, but we are progressing, and then in the beginning of January, we'll make a status, because there's also desks and different things that did not come in, equipment that we are waiting on to be able to fully equip and to be able to accommodate the general public. And if there are problems at the beginning for the general public, then we will surely have to accommodate from January, February, at least the students in Terminal so that they can prepare the upcoming school year. Thank you.
On Friday, the governments of St. Martin and St. Martin met to discuss and work on cooperation areas for the island.
The points on the agenda for today's meeting, actually, well, perhaps before I explain which are these points, I need to make sure that it is clear that the meeting that is called today is not one that's taken, it's not on the initiative of the president of the collectivité. This particular meeting was actually requested by the préfet, Monsieur Chopin, representative of the state services on the island. It simply appears that of late the state seems to be taking great interest into what is actually foreseen, or actually what it is approached in the whole issue of cooperation between the northern side and the southern side. Perhaps I also need to make use of this opportunity to say that the close collaboration that's beginning to develop between the two local governments is also indicative of a particular political position, if I should say it that way, because of the fact that it's also very indicative of the fact that the collectivité of St. Martin, which happens to be within the French Republic, is making use more and more of its new prerogative with regards to autonomy. It is sort of stepping forward inside of that particular prerogative and therefore developing a closer collaboration with the authorities on the southern side. The collaboration seeks to at least approach common issues and find joint solutions to these common issues. And so I guess because of that, the state has decided to somehow look into the matter and kind of oversee, monitor, look closer into what's being done with regards to cooperation. So today's meeting is actually on the request of the préfet, and the points that are going to be discussed concern, first of all, there are a number of agreements, cooperation agreements, that are in force at present. One, for instance, that concerns police issues in the field of security. For instance, the ability for the French police forces, in the case of a pursuit, if they're pursuing a criminal who crosses the border, the ability for them to continue the pursuit, up until they're relayed by the Dutch police or vice versa. The ability, for instance, for other situations, for instance, when there is a health issue, some sort of whatever it could be, whether it's the dengue fever, whether it's the chikungunya at this given moment, for the authorities to sort of relay each other with regards to that particular problem. Now, that in and of itself, I need to explain, is not a prerogative of the local government, because everything that relates to security and safety is a prerogative of the state for the most part. It's actually a shared prerogative because of the fact that the president of the collectivité also has responsibilities in the field of security. And that's probably the reason why she also has a territorial police force who intervenes at some level. She also has, as president of the collectivité, responsibilities in the field of safety, because of the fact that the safety of places that receive the public, whether it's schools, hospitals, which are public places, but also private places, discotheques, restaurants. She's the one who issues the permit and give the permission to open, or who demands that the establishment be closed because of the fact that safety is not respected. The other point that's also going to be discussed today is the fact that more and more, because of the fact that the cooperation is being reinforced between both sides of the island, the state is beginning to see the need for the establishment of an office, a secretariat, whatever the form is going to be has not yet been determined, but that's going to be simply focusing on cooperation at all levels and absolutely every field. In other words, that's going to be their responsibility to focus on cooperation, to make sure that there is indeed an ability for both governments to collaborate on issues, that are joint problems. The next point also that's going to be handled today or discussed today is a bit of that's rather new. We have on the French side, because of the French regulation, social charges that does not exist on the Dutch side. But it creates a sort of unbalance when it comes to employment, when it comes to unemployment as well. And it also often makes the cost of investment much more expensive on the French side. So I think for the very first time, the authorities of France are deciding to look into the matter and seeing how can there be found some sort of adjustment that can help alleviate that particular situation, because it causes the French side to be more expensive than the French side, and so therefore less attractive for foreign investment. That particular matter is also going to be looked at, and if possible, it's going to be addressed jointly. The last point that's on the agenda is everything that has to do with infrastructure, major works, roads, the building of, of any infrastructural work. How can there be some sort of common understanding and some sort of joint logic over the construction of those infrastructural works, whether they be roads or bridges or anything, and the impact that they can have on the environment in general all over the island. I'm sure you're reading into my words and you have an idea as to what this particular issue relates to. But again, it's the very first of its kind, and the state has felt the need to discuss this matter jointly and to look at it together so as to come up with some sort of joint conclusion. So these are going to be the points that are going to be will be discussed today during this particular meeting, and the hope that we all have is to come out of there with a better ability to indeed provide the collectivity of St. Martin with means to work closer with the government, with country St. Martin, and therefore establish a closer collaboration and some sort of, let's say, joint governance as to how this country, this territory should be run, not just by one side versus the other side or against the other side or in competition with the other side, but simply how can both of them be run in joint collaboration, just to make sure that what is being accomplished at the moment serves the entire population of St. Martin and not just one side versus the other.
Thank
You must be kidding. Okay.
Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, and died December 5, 2013. He was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, politician, and philanthropist who served as President of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was South Africa's first Black chief executive and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. His government focused on dismantling the legacy of apartheid through tackling institutionalized racism, poverty, and equality, and fostering racial reconciliation. Politically, an African nationalist and democratic socialist, he served as president of the African National Congress, ANC, from 1991 to 1997. Internationally, Mandela was Secretary General of the Non-Aligned Movement from 1998 to 1999. A Xhosa born to the Thembu royal family, Mandela attended the Fort Hare University at the University of Witwatersrand, where he studied law. Living in Johannesburg, he became involved in anti-colonial politics, joining the ANC and becoming a founding member of its Youth League. After the South African National Party came to power in 1948, he rose to prominence in the ANC's 1952 Defiance campaign, was appointed superintendent of the organization's Transvaal chapter, and presided over the 1955 Congress of the People. Working as a lawyer, he was repeatedly arrested for seditious activities and with the ANC leadership was unsuccessfully prosecuted in the treason trial from 1956 to 1961. Although initially committed to nonviolent protests, he co-founded the militant Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, in 1961 in association with the South African Communist Party, leading a sabotage campaign against the apartheid government. In 1962, he was arrested, convicted of conspiracy to overthrow the state, and sentenced to life imprisonment in the Rivonia trial. Mandela served over 27 years in prison, initially on Robben Island and later in Pollsmoor Prison and Victor Verster Prison. An international campaign lobbied for his release. He was released in 1990 during a time of escalating civil strife. Mandela joined negotiations with President F.W. de Klerk to abolish apartheid and establish multiracial elections in 1994, in which he led the ANC to victory and became South Africa's first black president. He published his autobiography in 1995. During his tenure in the government of national unity, he invited several other political parties to join the cabinet. We have come to the end of our weekend review. For other information on the happenings of the collectivity, be sure to watch the Chronicles with my dear colleague Steve Brookson on Mondays. This has been Our News, the 13th edition, on this Friday the 13th. What a coincidence, huh? My name is Keisha Brooks on the behalf of the collectivity of St. Martin. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.